Heels against a wall, bottom against the wall. Now touch the back of your head to it. That's the height test. Whether your head reaches decides who takes the tin off your top shelf in 10 years. 0 centimeters is normal. 1 to 3, watch it. More than 3, a doctor should look at your spine this month. But that gap isn't weak bone, it's bent bone, bent at the front, one wedge at a time, in silence. Which is why almost nobody finds it. Do it once more and do it honestly. Because posture lies. Heels touching, bottom touching, shoulders back, arms loose, eyes fixed on something at eye level, a light switch, the corner of a picture frame, and keep them there for 5 seconds. Do not tip your chin up to win. Now reach behind your head with 2 fingers and find out whether your skull is resting on plaster or floating in front of it. A finger laid flat is about 2 centimeters wide, which gives you a ruler you were born with. 1 finger slides in behind your head, you're at 2 centimeters. 2 fingers, you're at 4. If your head is pressed against the wall and your chin never lifted, your number is 0, and there is something about 0 I need to tell you later that most people would rather not hear. This measurement has a clinical name and a track record. In December 2004, a review in the Journal of the American Medical Association went through 14 studies of physical signs that predict a broken bone in the spine. The strongest finding on the list was the wall-occiput distance greater than 0, head not touching. It multiplied the odds of an undiagnosed spinal fracture by 4.6 times. Not a symptom you report, a distance measured in a hallway by anybody in half a minute. Now the second number, because the wall gives you the present and not the change. How tall were you at 25? Take today's height from that one. Here is what the averages actually look like, and they come from the Baltimore Longitudinal Study of Aging. 2,084 people, tracked from 1958 onward, some of them for 30 years. From 30 to 70, the average man gives up about 3 centimeters, and the average woman about 5. That's an inch and a bit for him, 2 inches for her, by 85 centimeters for men and 8 for women. So the bands spoken plainly. Under 65, more than 2 centimeters of lost height is not the calendar. Something happened. 65 to 74, 3 to 4 centimeters sits inside the average, and 5 is at the edge of it. 75 and over, 5 centimeters is expected, and 8 is common. That last band is the one that stopped me. 8 centimeters is more than 3 inches of a woman's body, and it is filed under average, as though average and harmless were the same word. And near the end, I'll give you the 2-centimeter mistake that nearly every house in the country forces you into, because there is something at the bottom of your wall that fakes this result, and 30 seconds done wrong is worse than not measuring. Height does not leave your legs. The long bones of the thigh and shin keep their length for life. Height leaves the front edges of 12 small bones stacked behind your ribcage, the thoracic vertebrae, and it leaves from the front edge specifically. That detail is the whole mechanism. Picture a single thoracic vertebra, a short drum of bone about the size of a wine cork, roughly 2 centimeters from top to bottom. Radiologists grade the damage to one of these by how much of the front height has gone, using a scale Harry Genant published in 1993. 20 to 25% of the front height missing is grade 1, the mild one. 25 to 40 is grade 2. Over 40 is grade 3. Grade 1 is where all of this begins, and grade 1 on a standing, dressed, cheerful woman is invisible. Do the arithmetic with me, because nobody does it out loud. Take a quarter off the front of 3 thoracic vertebrae. 3 grade 1s out of 12 at the 2 commonest sites, around the 7th and 8th in the middle of the back. Each front edge drops about 5 millimeters. You have lost roughly 1.5 centimeters of standing height. You have also gained a forward tilt, because the back of each bone still stands full height while the front does not. A bone taller at the back than the front is a wedge. Stack 3 wedges and everything above them leans. So why does the front go and not the whole bone? Because of the architecture inside. Cut a vertebra open, and it is not solid ivory. It is a lattice, vertical struts running top to bottom carrying the weight, and horizontal struts running side to side, tying the vertical ones together. Scaffolding, uprights and cross braces. Anyone who has walked past a building site has seen the exact arrangement, and the reason the cross braces are there is not to carry load, it's to stop the uprights from bending sideways. Leonhard Euler worked out what happens when you remove them in the 1750s, long before anyone thought to point the arithmetic at a human back. The load a slender column can take before it buckles falls with the square of its unbraced length. Square. Take out every second cross brace, so the free span doubles, and that upright now carries a quarter of what it carried before. It has lost no material. It weighs the same. It has lost its bracing, which means you can predict something the scan cannot tell you. A spine can shed a modest amount of mineral and a great deal of strength, and the two numbers will not match. It also means the failure is not a slow squash, it is a buckle, sudden, the way a drinking straw goes from straight to folded, with no stage in between. And a bone density scan measures how much mineral is in there, not how it is arranged. That gap between quantity and arrangement is where an entire decade of a woman's spine can hide. We know the bracing goes first because somebody looked. In 1988, at Aarhus in Denmark, Lise Mosekilde drilled 7mm cylinders out of the third lumbar vertebra of 23 people, aged 15 to 87. She set the cores in plastic, sawed them into slices 400 microns thick, thinner than a business card, and put them under polarized light, which made the vertical struts and the horizontal struts glow in different colors. Then she measured every one. Mosekilde's result is one of the cleanest things in this entire field. The horizontal struts got thinner and thinner with age, a strong correlation minus 0.71. The vertical struts did not thin at all, 0.06. Statistically, nothing. The uprights held their thickness while the cross-bracing thinned, and the gaps between struts widened in both directions. The building was not being starved of steel. It was being unbraced. Why would a body dismantle its own bracing? The leading explanation is uncomfortable and elegant, and physiologists still argue about the details. Bone rebuilds according to strain. The cells buried inside it, the osteocytes sense deformation and report it. Under a straight-down load, the vertical struts deform. The horizontal braces barely deform at all. They are insurance. They earn their keep in the one instant something starts to buckle, and never otherwise. So a system that keeps what it can feel working prunes the insurance first. It is a foreman who pays only the crews he can see sweating, and the bracing crew never sweats. Then estrogen leaves, and the foreman gets harder of hearing. Harold Frost called this the mechanostat, the idea that bone holds a set point for how much strain counts as enough. When estrogen falls, the set point rises. The same walk, the same stairs, the same bag of shopping, all still arriving, all now reading is insufficient. Your bones did not stop being loaded at 51. They started grading the load more harshly. 10 years of that has a look, and you have probably seen it without naming it. Lie flat on your back on a firm bed with no pillow, and try to watch a television across the room. If your eyes point at the ceiling and you need a pillow to see the screen, that is not the mattress. That is the top of your spine holding a curve it did not have at 40. And there is a measurable cost to walking around inside that curve. In the Tuscan hill towns of Greve and Chianti and Bagno or Ripoli, 783 people over 65 were tested on a 4-meter walk. The women with the largest gap at the wall walked about a quarter slower than the women with the smallest, and their balance scores fell furthest of all. Same legs, different geometry above them, and geometry is why this accelerates, which is the part I find genuinely unsettling. Your head weighs around 5 kilograms, about 11 pounds, roughly a full watering can. You already know from your own arms that a watering can held against your chest is nothing, and the same can held out at arm's length is punishing. Nothing about the can changed. What changed was the distance, because load on a structure is weight multiplied by how far out it sits. Now put that arithmetic in a spine. 3 small wedges move your head and ribcage forward by a few centimeters. Your back muscles must now pull harder to stop you folding, and every gram of that pull presses down through the front edges of the same vertebrae. The front edge was already the weak side, so the front edge takes more load, loses a little more height, and moves your head slightly further forward, which increases the load again. This is the only structure in your body that gets weaker in precisely the direction it is being pushed, not decline. A loop. If that reframed something for you, subscribe now, because the strangest part is still coming. The reason a spine can bend 3 centimeters without ever hurting, and it's the reason today's measurement matters more than a scan in 6 months. Here is where we are. 12 thoracic vertebrae, 2 centimeters each. Horizontal bracing thins, vertical struts don't. Unbraced length doubles, strength falls to a quarter. Front edge loses 25%, 1 wedge. 3 wedges, a centimetre and a half of height, and a forward lean. Forward lean multiplies front edge load, which builds the next wedge. Average total loss by 85 centimeters for a man, 8 for a woman. That's the machine, start to finish, in 12 numbers. Which raises the question I have not touched. If a bone in your back is folded by a quarter, why on earth doesn't it hurt? Try this while you're sitting. Put your fingers flat sideways into the gap on your side between your lowest rib and the top rim of your pelvis. 3 fingers or more, that gap is normal. 2 or fewer, and your lumbar spine has lost height, which is the second finding from that 2004 review. A rib-pelvis distance under 2 finger breadths raised the odds of a lumbar fracture by nearly 4 times. 2 measurements now, both free, both taken in your own chair. And the answer to the pain question is that everything I have said so far quietly assumed you would know. You would not. The front of a vertebral body is poorly supplied with pain nerves compared with the joints behind it and the sheath around it. The folding happens in millimeters across months, and the ache that eventually arrives usually comes from muscles holding a new shape, not from the bone that changed. It gets called stiffness. It gets called being 68. You have heard that most of these fractures are never diagnosed, and I'd rather be straight with you about that figure than repeat it. It comes from Rochester, Minnesota. 341 residents diagnosed over 5 years in the 1980s, with the radiological rate compared to the clinical rate. Roughly 1 in 3 came to anybody's attention. That is 1 county, 1 population, 40 years ago, and the number gets quoted as though it were a head count. The direction is solid, the precision is borrowed. Now, I know the objection, because it is the sensible one. You've never fallen. You've never had an accident. Nothing has ever hurt in a way that felt like a break, and a broken bone is something you would remember. That is completely reasonable, and it is exactly why this stays hidden. These fractures mostly do not come from falls. They come from ordinary load meeting an unbraced lattice, lifting a case into an overhead locker, hauling a window open, a hard sneeze, and a good share of them with no identifiable moment at all. And plenty of you doing this test will get a clean 0 with 3 fingers at your ribs, and nothing is wrong, and that is a real result worth having. What I will not do is tell you the 0 clears you, because it doesn't. And here's the version of this test that survives contact with an actual house. Look at the bottom of your wall. There is a skirting board there, 1 to 2 centimeters deep, running the length of every room. If you stood with your heels against the skirting board rather than the wall, your heels sat 2 centimeters in front of the surface you were measuring against, your whole body tipped back, and your head touched when it had no business touching. That single detail invents a false 0 in half the homes in the country, so use a closed internal door instead. A door face is flat to the floor with no skirting, and it is the most accurate measuring surface you own. Second, the chin. Clinicians standardize this position precisely, the bottom of your eye socket and the top of your ear canal on one horizontal line. In practice, pick a mark at exactly your own eye level, 6 feet away, and stare at it. Lifting your chin by 5 degrees will close a 2-centimeter gap and hand you a comforting number. That means nothing. Third, the clock. Your discs rehydrate overnight, and you are genuinely taller in the first hour after getting out of bed. For most people, somewhere between 0.5 centimeter and 2. So measure in the evening or always at the same hour and write the hour down beside the number. Compare 8 in the morning to 8 at night, and you will measure the water in your discs, not the shape of your bones. Fourth, if you have no idea what you measured at 25, use your arm span. Stand at that door, arms straight out, and have someone measure fingertip to fingertip. In most adults, arm span sits within a couple of centimeters of peak adult height. And arm span does not shrink. It is a rough proxy and it varies by build, so treat it as a range rather than a verdict. And fifth, the one almost nobody is told. When you do get a bone density scan, ask them to add the vertebral fracture assessment, the VFA. Same machine, same appointment, a few extra minutes, and it takes a side-on image of your thoracic and lumbar spine at a fraction of the radiation of a standard spine X-ray. It measures vertebral heights directly. It is frequently not run unless a patient asks for it by name. Ask for it by name. Now the honest limit, and it sits right next to the confident part on purpose. A 2011 analysis of clinical kyphosis examination found the wall occiput distance had a sensitivity of 41% and a specificity of 92%. Read that as follows. A gap is strong evidence of something, and no gap is weak evidence of nothing. This test is good at saying yes and poor at saying no. Clinicians don't even agree on the cutoff. Some use anything above 0, some use 2 centimeters, and a 2018 study argued the best threshold for detecting real hyperkyphosis was 6.5. When the experts are still arguing about the line, you should hold your own number loosely. So, 4 things. Tonight. 1. Measure your gap against a closed door. In the evening, eyes level and write the number in centimeters. 2. Put your fingers in the rib to pelvis gap and count them. 3 or more, or 2 or fewer. 3. Find your peak height or your arm span, subtract today's height, and if the difference is over 4 centimeters, that alone is a recognized reason to be imaged, whatever anyone says about your age. 4. Repeat the wall measurement in 6 months at the same hour, and if it has grown by 2 centimeters in that time, that change is worth a same-week phone call. The change matters more than the starting number. If step 5 was new to you, asking for the VFA by name, hit like now. It is the only signal that puts this in front of the next woman who has been told to wait 6 months for a scan that measures the wrong thing. Before you go, comment 3 things: your age, the country you're watching from, and your gap in centimeters. I read them, and I want to see where the line actually falls in this audience rather than in a study. And share this with one woman who has been quietly rehemming her trousers. She thinks the shop changed its sizing. A number you can see is a problem you can still argue with.